talk through where does a Rails monolith on Postgres start to break? And what are the things that you can do to sort of break those out into maybe read and write instances and get the most bang for your buck on RDS?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, some of the categories definitely are connections from the application to the database. And then looking at the operations, like the right operations and a certain path for optimizing those, which could be moving, if the tables are very large, moving to partition tables, and that's because you can have less contention because you can have different buckets. The way in Postgres with partitioned tables, you just have more tables. You just divide up a big table into a set of smaller tables. And then on the read side, again, looking at the operations, the read operations, there's a pretty well-known path there of creating a read replica. And in Postgres, you can actually do a couple of different types of replications techniques. You can do physical replication or logical replication. With physical, you just get a full copy of your server instance running in a read-only mode. So as long as your application framework or another library that you use allows you to do this, you can split any of the read queries to that separate instance, and then you can separate the load that would have been on that primary instance out to its own instance. So that could be, if you've got a 500 gigabyte Postgres instance, like its memory that's available, you could have a second one that's solely for the purpose of reads. And there's some caveats to that, of course, with replication. It takes a bit of time to send a lot of bytes of data over the network to another instance. But there's even some modern capabilities from different cloud providers where they've nearly removed replication lag from the equation with separating compute and storage. So I've worked on a team that used those kinds of technologies where we could more easily separate our read traffic from our write traffic. And then I think there's a lot of interesting performance. So as far as like, I guess let me go back a bit to your original question about some of the points where you run into issues. The connections one I mentioned was typically the application will have, database connections to Postgres are fairly costly. They have process forking that needs some instance resources, some memories allocated to that process. And because of that, there's some latency incurred whenever a query needs to run and a process is forked. And to get around that, then we can keep kind of a set of connections open and in an idle state that can be reused.